So maybe while we're doing that, in the interest of time, we can go ahead and at least do some introductions for the three of us, for the audience to get to know us. So I can get started. My name is Marcela Granados. I am a principal and the global head of insurance here at Databricks. I am an actuary by background, and then I turned into a data scientist about a decade ago. And pass it over to Shirley.
Hey everyone, I'm Shirley Wang. I'm a delivery solutions architect at Databricks. Similar to Marcela, I also have an actuarial background. I worked several years in the consulting space for companies like Milliman and Oliver Wyman.
Suman.
Hi, folks. I hope you're seeing the right thing. My name is Suman Misra. I'm a senior solutions architect at Databricks. I've worked as a vendor to insurance companies for almost 20 years now.
Awesome. So today we're going to be talking about actuarial evaluation in the context of risk management. And we'll be sharing reference architecture as well as doing a demo of our platform on how we thought about doing analysis on life and annuity space. Next slide. So in terms of the agenda today, I'll spend 5 minutes just talking a little bit about the actuarial landscape, the insurance value chain on life and annuities, what has changed and what is the catalyst of people, embracing this technology. And then we'll map some of the technical capabilities of platforms to those challenges. I'll then turn it over to Suman to start putting together the components of what would an insurance data platform would look like, from data pipelines all the way to consumption of insights. And then, as I said, Shirley will do a valuation demo. And Q&A, I already started seeing some of the questions, which is great. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so I guess 5 more main functions on life and annuity insurance change. We see a lot of emphasis on product design and pricing. So thinking about how to get to segmented, the right segmentation and having hyper-personalization on the offerings. There's, of course, life insurance companies that have embraced the concept of doing more than just the mortality assumptions, like typical actuarial tables, but also looking at behavioral data. How can you incorporate lifestyle changes, genetic changes, and real-time monitoring, such as Fitbits? John Hancock with the product Vitality, think about a decade ago, were the pioneers of doing that. And the way that it manifests on our profession is that a lot of the use of alternative data sources become real. So in the past, everything that you would have would be on a structured basis, all ready for you for consumption. But now we're seeing also unstructured data, video, images, text, and audio, as well as having those real-time insights flowing to your analysis. Then risk assessment and underwriting, doing a lot of straight to processing on life insurance, understanding when can you fully automate the choice of not only the product, but also the writer. And at the same time, when would you triage the policyholders to do more of the blood tests and urine tests and more of the intrusive, invasive, expensive analysis to make sure that you have the right risk. Claims and fraud, mainly on the group benefit side, looking at auto-adjudication of claims, but also the correlation between, let's say, diagnosis and treatments. We see a lot of uptake on evidence rate on fraud. Of course, with Gen AI and a lot of the capabilities on technology, now we're also seeing fraud on the side of just like people able to just, have these deep fake images and videos, and what are insurance companies doing to catch those and direct to the special investigation unit and using machine learning models. The last 2 sections are more on what Suman and Shirley will cover. So of course, we have a lot of people in the audience that are actuaries. So from the actuarial valuation side, cash flow testing, embedded value, you name it. Shirley will go over some of the ideas on like if you break down the flow on the pre and post process for actuarial valuation. The challenges become that you have a lot of data, volumes of data, large, complex calculations. How do you orchestrate inputs, assumptions, interest rate, discount rate, you name it, everything that you need to calculate present value future cash flows in a way that you don't duplicate data, that you understand the decisions that you made, you do stress testing on what the regulators are saying, which leads me to the last piece, which is regulatory compliance. What we see is that a lot of the reason why people look for improvements in the process is because the traditional tools cannot handle all of the requirements that regulators may have on just testing different scenarios or just going back and doing what if analysis. So within the demo that the team will do, we'll show how can you share a lot of these reports and dashboards internally with your own stakeholders as well as externally with regulators. Next slide. Okay, so the way that we see the actuarial function evolve, we put it into 3 different buckets. So in terms of operational efficiency, there's obviously the pressure to remain competitive while still driving revenues and growth. And as I said, the data is only going to increase, right? So the traditional tools that you may have on even Alteryx, may not be able to deal with the large volumes of data. Companies are growing organically or through acquisition, which represents another challenge. The format of the data may be different, and the calculations are getting more complex every day. From a productivity perspective, we get asked a lot of times, what is the right target operating model, people, process, platform? How can you upscale your existing workforce? What would an actuary need to be doing in terms of up-leveling their technical skills? Do they need to code? And then when you're thinking about how these data and assumptions are being used throughout the whole company, then we see a lot of inconsistency in the tools and the technology being used by different personas. And then the macroeconomic factors of what I mentioned already, there's always regulation that's going to hit insurance. When you're dealing with isolating the effects of a lot of the macro and microeconomic factors, that's when you need to use tools that will help you with analyzing what happened and getting into root causes. And then the Databricks value proposition is, and Suman will get into details, is like how can we have this efficient integration of data inputs, assumptions, and the insights. How can you do it in an efficient manner? So mainly our platform is very good at the compute. And it's a pay-per-use, so there's no licenses or anything like that. The productivity piece is we're seeing a lot of AI. AI has been going on for a while, but the main reason why people are exploring these methodologies is that they do want to untap the value of that unstructured data. If you got better data, you can at least test different and more advanced algorithms. And in terms of Gen AI, there's a lot of what the industry is calling copilots, right? So how can you actually generate code in whatever programming language of your choice in natural language and help you with not only writing the code, but also debugging or fixing. And then all of this, whether you do a regression analysis in Excel or you build a generative AI application, you need governance, you need lineage, you have your internal audit, and you're going to get questions around this. So having all of these guardrails in place, really helps with embracing these technologies. So with that, I'll turn it over to Suman, who will cover the components of the platform. Thank you.
Suman, you are on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Marcella. So what I'm going to do is cover off on the integrated platform Marcella alluded to in her previous discussion, and talk about what Databricks provides in that regard. So this is a high-level kind of abstracted conceptual view. Microsoft calls it a well-architected framework. There are other hyperscalers and vendors in the market that call it something like a lakehouse. And what it is really is a cloud data platform. So our focus today is on that platform, the integration of all the component parts in that platform. So the fundamental architectural construct is that this is a platform that is built for the cloud, and it is built on top of cloud storage. If you look at this lowest layer in this diagram, it says cloud storage. So there's this notion that data has gravity, and we want to bring as many things to the data as possible. And cloud storage is commoditized, it's cheap, it's distributed, it's resilient, it's highly available, and it allows us to load up any data we want, structured or unstructured, tables, files, video, audio, notes, RFPs, call recordings. So we have this massive corpus of data. We have it in what some people would call a data lake. And what do we do with it? How do we actually exploit it for the personas that are listed at the top of this diagram in an insurance company ecosystem? You've got IT engineers, you've got data scientists, you've got business analysts, you've got potentially external partners. But in the middle of all that, you have actuaries. And actuaries really span both worlds in terms of a user experience. Actuaries, actuarial developers, the ones that I've dealt with, and we have dealt with at Databricks for many years. Some actuaries prefer developer tools. Some actuaries prefer more BI or business-oriented interfaces. Some actuaries span the gamut of both. So catering to all of those personas, but specifically the actuarial persona, by giving them all the tools that they are expecting from a user experience standpoint. Now, Databricks, a lakehouse, a cloud data platform is not necessarily specifically an actuarial tool. What it is a capability to enhance and kind of complement some of the specialized tools that actuaries will use. So looking at that data layer, the first thing that Databricks adds to it as a cloud data platform is what, again, Marcella alluded to, which was a layer of data and AI governance. We have to manage these assets. We have to be able to search these assets. We have to know exactly who is entitled to use what. And we can't do that without governance. You might say, well, governance is built into every cloud data storage platform. This is a layer of governance that is actually business context aware. It's not just aware of files on a disk. It's aware of tables, the rows in those tables, the columns and what those columns represent. It's aware of the audio files that potentially are call center recordings. It's aware of videos that could be potentially medical reports or x-rays. So the governance layer has to be aware at a very finite and business level of what the data is and allow us to search it, navigate it, discover, give us lineage, a lot of other things. On top of that, there should be an AI engine. Right? We talk about automation, a number of questions that come through about automation. How do we automate things? Well, AI helps us. AI is not new. It's been around a while, but in terms of this platform, AI helps us, again, discover assets, document our assets when there are no documentation. Again, Marcel had brought up assisting us in writing code, or with natural language, just generating code. Better yet, documenting your code. I have seen other presentations at this seminar talking about using Python and other methodologies. This is just taking the next step and allowing you to write code more efficiently and automate all your processes around it. Then, of course, on top of that, we actually need a processing engine, something that processes data, right? Whether it's ingesting and transforming the data, which you do some of in the actuarial world, you have actuarial developers that help you with that, you have IT engineers that help you with that. There needs to be a data engine that can do this. That data engine ideally should also be able to perform things that go beyond just data processing. We need to be able to build ML models. We need to be able to build AI artifacts. And the next stage to that is also sharing, querying, and interacting with the data. And there needs to be some kind of data warehouse capability built into that engine, right? And one of the salient points and the critical points relative to Lakehouse and relative to a cloud data platform is we don't want to be doing these things in disparate sets of tools. So if you have a niche tool that does some sort of data analysis or graphing that is copying the data out of cloud storage, storing it on your laptop, storing it in a shared drive, taking it outside of the governance envelope, and we say that's breaking the platform. That's a cheat. We try not to cheat as much as possible. So even if you're using disparate tools, make sure that those tools are talking to the cloud storage. They're not breaking the entitlements, and they're not creating assets that are not ultimately governed and can be shared. Overarching all of that is orchestration. Again, this goes back to automation. How do we stitch all these capabilities together? How do we coordinate them to create an asset? You're ingesting data, you're building a machine learning model, you're serving that model, and ultimately creating a data asset. All of those capabilities have to be stitched together. The ingest cannot live separately from the machine learning aspect or the training aspect or the serving aspect. So that's where the orchestration layer comes in. And we've talked about the tooling that you use from a user experience perspective. The last thing I want to touch on very quickly is collaboration. The data platform needs to allow you to collaborate with people that exist outside of your organizational boundary in a secure way. A couple examples from an actuarial perspective, maybe in a reinsurance situation where you need to share data. Another big use case would be in an M&A situation where perhaps your company's been acquired or is an acquisition phase of another company, and you need to share data across organizational boundaries. So collaboration is critical. I'll break that down, and since we're short on time, we'll just build this slide through. I'll break that down into key capabilities. And this references Databricks, but could be any cloud platform. Critical at the bottom from a cloud storage perspective, you have to be able to support every cloud, okay? Amazon, Microsoft, Google. In Asia, Alibaba. And the other thing we don't want to do as an anti-pattern, avoid any proprietary format. Your data platform should support all the open formats that are available on-prem or in the cloud, whether it's a CSV, a JSON, Parquet, formats built on top of Parquet like Delta or Iceberg. It should support the open formats without creating a walled garden of proprietary data. In governance, some key things we'll see in the demo: auditing and lineage. Where does the data come from? Who touched it before it got to you? How many hops did it take? And do we have an audit trail of who's done what to it? In terms of the AI engine, some key aspects are making sure we can search and discover all the data. We can use natural language queries to ask the system, where does this data live? What tables is it in? Tell me about those tables. Or potentially, what files is it in? Tell me about those files or documents. Have an assistant to help us write code or to write the code for us, right? If we're not using a point and click GUI or a low code interface, if we're, for example, writing Python or SQL, then let's make sure the assistant can help us write and document that code. In terms of analytics, let's make sure we have all the analytical capabilities, right? Machine learning, generative AI models, let's be able to call them, let's be able to train them. And of course, support SQL. SQL is the lingua franca of our ecosystem. Let's make sure we support SQL for people that only know SQL. In the orchestration layer, we want to have workflows for automation. We want to manage change management. We want to manage version control, CI/CD. So any asset we create is a production asset. It doesn't live and encourage technical debt. And every time it has to be updated, create a 6-month process. We want updates daily, weekly, monthly for our analytical assets. And from a dev tools perspective, the platform should allow you to use an IDE of choice. If you like to use VS Code, make sure the platform supports that. If you'd like to use a notebook, make sure the platform makes that available or supports that. If you like to use a framework like MLflow, again, the platform should support that. From a BI and apps perspective, spreadsheets. Everybody lives in spreadsheet. Again, the platform should provide you a spreadsheet view. You should have AI and BI interfaces where you can talk to your data, create graphs or dashboards. There should be a SQL editor. Last but not least, there should be an ability for either the actuarial team itself or the larger IT organization to create custom views or apps in that platform. And going to collaboration, critical user user feature, enables secure data sharing across organizational boundaries. Less important maybe to an actuary is the data marketplace where you can go buy or sell data assets, and a clean room capability where, again, you can securely collaborate with a subset of your data with a given partner or set of partners. So the last thing I'll talk about is what you're going to see in a demo from a data flow perspective. So we have our sources of data on the left-hand side of the screen. Policy administration systems, claims admin systems, your actuarial evaluation system, market data, your risk management systems flowing into the platform, being ingested and being loaded into cloud storage, and then being transformed and enriched through various phases. We talk about it in the construct of bronze, silver, and gold. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But your data is being processed through various stages of curation. You're perhaps doing feature engineering. You're doing enrichment, right? You're potentially building ML and AI assets. And ultimately, you're serving everything up into a series of consuming platforms. Either it's through dashboards or AI interfaces within the data platform, or it's just through something like Tableau or Power BI, which there was a presentation on prior to this, in other platforms. I think a key characteristic of what you want to have is a data platform that is built around a powerful processing engine that supports all the languages or no-code interfaces that you're comfortable with. So things like Python, R, potentially SQL, or if you have no-code interfaces in a tool like Dataiku, the engine, the data processing engine, which in the Databricks case is something called Spark, is able to support these various modes of interaction. And across the top, again, when we talk about automation, we need to have workflows. We need to have integration with CI/CD, because without that, we cannot have rapid iteration and multiple generations of analytical assets. We need to be integrated with the entire DevOps framework. Again, there have been presentations today that have talked about that. And finally, on the analytical side, we need to have give people the ability to interact with your analysis and analytical assets with plain English language. That's critical and becoming more critical as time goes on. So from a data curation standpoint, what we see is typically multiple layers of data stored within the platform. The first layer we call it bronze, but you really can call it anything, is the raw data. We want to have raw data replicated in the data platform. There are a number of reasons for that. Some users may want to go directly to the raw data. From the standpoint of restatement and versioning, we want to have access to all that historical data in its raw state. The next layer of data that we will have is cleaned and curated data. Quality has been applied. Perhaps it's been normalized, aggregated, or enriched. It has grain at a policy level. There may be some masking and redaction that's been done. The final layer of data that we capture, or a shelf of data that we have in the system, will be our reporting and ultimately our ultimate layer, which is where our reporting assets, our modeling assets, our other analytical assets are built off of. And you'll see that again in the demo in terms of how the final presentation occurs. So I'll turn it over to Shirley now to actually walk you through the live software demo around the evaluation use case.
Thank you, Suman. And let me take over the screen share. Second. Does everyone see the demo page in terms of the slide? Okay, perfect. So for the demo today, let's just zoom in on the actual valuation processes. On here, you pretty much see like a very naive presentation of the end-to-end process. We start with pre-process, go into actual modeling, and then conclude with a post-process where we obtain the final reports. So for the purpose of today's demonstration, we're going to show you how modern data platforms like Databricks can improve certain pieces of this process without really challenging the entire process or throwing away the established process that we're so used to for decades. And I'll order, we'll look at three very specific examples. I'll order the examples in a way that it's easier for you to digest the information and data you will see on my screen. So we're going to start with a dashboard looking at how the review can be made more streamlined, and then take one step back looking at the data that's used to build those dashboards, and one more step back to look at how things stitch together. Let's start with the first example, the review and approval processes. It's always been a manual and time-consuming process, but more recently was the introduction of complex insurance products like fixed index annuities, variable annuities. The regulations caught up in terms of complexity as well. So it becomes even more challenging to drill into the review data because of the volume and complexity of the data and calculations involved with traditional tools. And in addition, when it comes to review, there's really no solution that's one size fits all. With different products and sometimes with the same product, but from one period to another period, the reviewers would have different questions that require different analysis. So it's really hard to build a standardized and automated process around the review. But the good thing is that with the advanced data analysis capabilities that the modern data platforms provides, things like dashboard, AI assistants that we'll look at in a second, the process will get more streamlined. So with that, let me take you to a dashboard in the Databricks platform. For the purpose of the presentation today, I picked the variable annuity projection data. So let's assume we are the actuarial manager. We're now reviewing the projection from a block of VA business, and that's arguably the most complex review we have to do. So if I were the reviewer, what are some of the things I want to do? First thing is, what's the block of VA business? I want to slice and dice differently. And then that's because the different writers, they have different calculation, different risk profiles. So with traditional tools, that might mean that you have to jump between multiple workbooks. You might have complex logic set up in your workbook. and then you switch the filter, waiting for them to refresh. But that's made very easy with modern platforms. So I can just change the widget values here. You will see that the underlying data get refreshed very quickly thanks to the Spark engine that Suman was talking about. I'll take it one step further with the chart and then try some cross-filtering, which is very hard with tools like Excel. And so this is where I look at one chart. Let's say for today, I really want to focus on large cap equity funds and how that looks like. I can just click on that single component in one graph. My related graph will also get updated, help me understand the particular segment of the business. The other thing with variable annuity projection is that the regulations ask for nested stochastic projections. That means a lot of data for you to look at. We want to have an overall view of the thousands of scenarios, but when the time calls for it, we also want to drill into specific scenarios, especially those tail end scenarios that give us the reserve figures. And how can a modern dashboard help? So here I have a view where I can list the worst and the best scenarios. I can plot all the scenario results in one chart. I can calculate my CTE figures pretty much on the fly very, very quickly. But whenever I have the need to drill into specific scenarios, in this case, I see that 480 is the worst scenario, 282 is the best scenario. I can quickly come to other components of the chart and then have that refresh. And then in this case, it's pretty clear that yes, my scenario 282 is a lot better than 480. So that should address the first challenge that we've talked about was the review process. Is we want to be able to have that flexibility and then drill into the different granularity of data to help us analyze the results. But what about the second challenge that if it was a dashboard like this, it cannot address all of the reviewers' questions. For example, in the dashboard here, I organize things by product types. But what if I don't want to look at the results by product types? I really just want to understand numbers based on the presence of certain riders. And then that's where some AI assistant can come in to help. And then in Databricks, we call it a Genie space. Give me 1 second to open it up. So Genie space on a high level is a conversational interface that help you to perform data analysis. So continuing our question from the dashboard, in this case, I can just ask Genie, what is the present value of payoffs by scenarios for only the policies where, let's say, GMDB is true. And let's take a look at it, give Genie a few seconds, take a look at the kind of response, what we get. Genie gives you a 3-part answer. So the first part is a short description that explains the reasoning that Genie used to approach this question. So this will help the reviewer build the trust with the tool. Part 2 of Genie's response is the generated figures. Part 3 of Genie's response, and I think this is something that will resonate with most actuaries, is the query that Genie actually used to get the figures. And it's a simple, it's a SQL query. And then for most actuaries, SQL should be something that we can understand. What's even better about this is the tool itself gives you the flexibility to just add the query. And then that's very applicable for actuaries. Oftentimes we have actuarial judgment that we want to apply. So in this case, let's say I noticed that it's not really ranking my scenarios in any order. So what I want to do is I'll just add one simple line. I want Genie to order my numbers by the payoffs in a descending order. So I can see what are the worst scenarios. And I can quickly rerun without leaving the interface, without rebuilding the solutions, have a refreshed response. From there, I can visualize stuff. I can even, in a conversation style, ask it to perform similar analysis for a different segment of the business. And Jeannie will remember what I asked it to do earlier and then give me the answer. So that gives you a more natural interaction that you would have with the technology. So if you relate what we've done here to a typical review experience you would have in the valuation processes, one of the reasons why actuaries prefer Excel as for review purposes is that we look at the existing analysis, but we also have the flexibility of just doing some side calculations in a spreadsheet and then look at the difference. Now, with the dashboard and Genie, it actually takes that experience to the next level in the sense that you still have the flexibility of doing some analysis on the side, but instead of you manipulating the Excel cells, adding in new formulas, the Gen AI will help you to write queries and give you results right away. Also, you have more data available at your fingertip. That's like that more than what can be hosted in a single workbook or even multiple workbooks. So that wraps up the first example we'll look at today. The second example, and sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier. If you have any questions with anything I've shown, feel free to leverage chat or the Q&A and I will come to the end and address them. So the second feature that we are going to take a look at is related to all the data management activities. So that will be things like gathering data, processing them, aggregating them. Now, the challenges with that is new regulations like LDTI, IFRS17, they really call for increased data management requirements, meaning there's more data for actuaries to process and validate. And often, valuation actuaries are really the consumers of all the data that's produced in the insurance company. So if there are data silos, then actuaries are the victim and then have to spend more time understanding what the data are produced by different teams. The answer to that from a modern data platform perspective is data governance. And then that's where we centralize data discoverability will help you understand the lineage and history better. So time to flip to the Databricks environment again. What I'm showing you here on the screen is a catalog view of all the data that you can have in the Databricks platform. If you have interacted with tools like SQL databases, what at least you see in the panel that I'm moving here should be familiar, where you see a list of schemas, tables, other data assets. What sets data platform like Databricks different from a simple SQL database is that it's really meant to be an enterprise data platform where you can see not just the data used by your team, but also across different teams in the organization. However, when it comes to data discoverability, like having that list of tables doesn't really help or it doesn't get you all the way there. With Databricks, what you also see in terms of the data as a complete data dictionary. So that includes things like table description, column description, and like Marcella Suman suggested before, when it's a scenario where like you don't really have those documentation provided already for you, you can ask the help of Gen AI tools to generate them. And then in a few seconds, you will see reasonable deduction of what these columns are that will help you understand a data set that you've never interacted before. In addition to the data dictionary, the other thing you can leverage are some data usage insights. So this is where you see who used this data, where is the data used, how frequent is it used. So if you have any questions about this, then at least you know who to ask questions from. The second set of powerful information that both Marcella and Suman mentioned is the lineage. So I'm just going to show you how it really looks like in practice. Lineage is nothing but the relationships between different table or data assets. So think of a scenario where you are reviewing some reserve numbers, and then for the current period, suddenly your reserve figures are 20% higher than the prior period. What would you do with traditional tools? You probably look at the Excel formula, try to trace back to multiple earlier workbook even to identify where that difference comes from. With modern data platforms, that level of tracing is automatically tracked and displayed in front of you. In the example I have here, I'm looking at the VA in-force data. And then from here, you actually see that this table comes from certain flat files at specific location. And then this table is used to construct a product mapping. In addition to just this upstream downstream relationship, because this data platform is really meant to be a unified platform that understands your data, understand all the related processing loads associated with your data, you would also be able to track the action that create this relationship. So you understand how exactly certain actions were performed, how this relationship were formed. You would also be able to see like how the data is consumed anywhere else in the platform. So in this case, we would be able to see that, yes, my VA in-force data is the one that's behind my VA projection dashboard that we've seen before. So that gives you an overall end-to-end lineage of what's happening with your data assets. Will save you a lot of time when it comes to like root cause analysis, troubleshooting, stuff like that. So the next thing I want to show you while we stay in this view is the history thing. So with certain data formats, you will be able to trace the changes made to particular tables. You will even be able to time travel. We call it time travel. So you will be able to go back to earlier versions as needed. And then it will be very relevant in certain actuarial activities. So things like, let's say we're doing a roll forward analysis for LDTI. And then that's where you need to juggle across multiple versions of in-force data, model round results, et cetera, et cetera. Now, of course, you can create a separate table for all of them, but then you probably just end up with 50 tables at the end of the cycle, don't know how to handle them. With time travel, you can leverage a single set of table, jump across versions until you solidify your analysis, knowing which version of the data you want to use for that roll forward analysis, making a long-term backup of that. So you will end up maybe, let's say, 5-10 versions of the data that you really need at the end of the valuation cycle. That would simplify your storage solution, but more importantly, it helps you to maintain that single source of truth as you carry this years in the future. So lots of things that we've just showed in this Explorer alone, but that's all the features that's coming together and then serve the purpose to help you understand the data better and then operate them more efficiently. So if you have ever worked on anything like LDTI data requirements, that's usually with traditional tools that's like painfully slow because so many teams are involved, no one knows what's going on. But if you have a platform like this where actuaries can self-serve and understand the data landscape at the organization, this will put that data requirement process much faster. Okay, So that wraps up example number 2. For the last example that we'll look at today is related to how we stitch all the activities that needs to happen in a post-processing stage. Lots of activity to manage. More importantly, the main challenge here is really that a lot of activities needs to happen first. Data needs to be ready. Actuarial model needs to run successfully. And when all of the upstream activities are checked off, like valuation actuaries really are left with very limited time to come up with final reports. And seems like I'm complaining about LDTI, IFRS17 here, but they really add additional disclosure requirements. So that means that with the limited timelines, actuaries have even more work to do. But the orchestration capabilities that comes from those modern data platforms will be able to help with this. And let's look at a specific example. Let me make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. So what's on the screen here is an example of Databricks workflow. Databricks workflow, by the way, is the core of the orchestration services that's offered in this platform. If you have never seen a graphical workflow, this might be a little counterintuitive for the first time. So let's just take a few seconds to understand that. Each boxes that you see on the screen here is a specific activity that the actuary or the engine needs to perform when it comes to valuation. So things like I'll need to load my in-force data. I'll need to generate a particular report. The arrows between the boxes indicates a dependency relationship. So for example, I can only process my seriatim projection when I have my scenario projections and also when I have my in-force data so I can link some of the demographic or product features together. I can only generate a claims report when I have my claims data ready. So that comes together, give you a graphical presentation of what needs to happen in this valuation cycle. And when you run it, the machine recognizes that which tasks are ready to be run, which are not. So that serves two purposes. Number one, you really, like whenever the data is ready, you get the report out as soon as possible. And then the reviewers can be notified and then start their review. That should shorten the overall cycle time. Number two, if the data is not ready, we don't want to generate the report. We don't want an incomplete report to be in front of the reviewer and then waste their time. So traditionally, I think actuaries are already managing a lot of these activities by having maybe a spreadsheet tracking what's ready, and then have like I am other person saying, hey, please generate this report now. But with machine handling this for you, this will be more streamlined, more automated, less error prone, save you more time in the end-to-end processes. The other thing I would like to call out here, and I think that's just an operational nuance that actuaries have to deal with, is quarter end, year end, the valuation processes would look somewhat different from a typical month end. You would have additional reports, or like the reports you have will look slightly different. So that complicates things because like the actuaries will need to manage multiple sets of processes when it comes to different reporting frequencies. But with modern tools like Databricks workflow, you can specify that business logic in the workflow itself. So in this case, I'm saying that if my valuation month is December, that indicates the end of year reporting, I'm going to generate an annual report. If not, I'm just going to do my typical reports. So what that means to you is that you only have to maintain a single set of workflows, and then that handles the nuance about the reporting frequency for you and will respect those business requirements as they execute. So again, reduces admin overhead and saves some time. Last thing I want to say here is we can also trigger the process in a smarter way and then save some time. we can, for example, set our valuation process to start BD 0 at midnight, so that when actuaries log on the second day, they already have some reports to analyze. They don't have to come on 8 a.m., start the run, wait for 4 hours, and then after lunch, they can start working. So that saves you a critical 4 hours in that potentially 5 to 7 days of the reporting period. You can even set it based on certain event happening. So for example, I'm getting a new set of projections from my GGY Access or Poly system. I want to refresh my report. So the moment the new projections arrive in my cloud storage, I'm going to trigger this. So my reports are refreshed as soon as possible. That's all about the workflow setup. Not to forget that with this automation, it also comes better observability and auditability in the sense that each time that you trigger the run, it's recorded. You know exactly when it was run, for how long it was run, what are the outcomes. In cases where things fail, you should be able to go into the specific activity and understand the error message that was produced. So that should really help, especially as you scale this across multiple LOBs, entities, teams. Like once multiple teams are involved in evaluation processes, a constant struggle people have is to understand where things are. But this view will instantly bring everyone to the same page, and then they understand how long they need to wait, what are some of the key dependencies that have already satisfied or they're still waiting for. In addition, any of the information you see here can be easily extracted out and saved for future auditing purposes. And that's also very critical, oftentimes a hard requirement when it comes to evaluation processes. So that wraps up all the examples we would like to show you in the workspace. I think at this point, maybe let's just take a minute and absorb all the stuff that Marcella, Sumaya have talked about, all the things we've walked you through in the workspaces. And I would like to do that by highlight 3 critical value that modern cloud platforms provide, especially in relation to actuarial valuation. So the number one thing is that these tools are meant to empower actuaries. So that you focus on the value add activities, insights, driving actuarial judgment, rather than the manual and repetitive tasks. If you are the senior actuaries, then you have a lot of thoughts about, oh, I want to see things this way, that way. AI will help you to get that implemented faster, and then you will see the results more quickly than from those conventional tools. If you are the junior actuaries with data discoverability, lineage, you understand the operations that's happening in the organization. You will learn things faster, save some time for your FSA exams. And then overall, I think technology has evolved to a stage where it can balance the automation that comes with it, but at the same time, give you enough flexibility to apply your actuarial judgment. So the cases we've seen in Genie Space, if you don't like part of the answer that it gives you, just make a 1-line, 2-line edit, rerun, have the answer that you are really looking for. Next, valuation processes calls for a lot of governance and control. And with a unified data platform, it will help with, like it respects that and then help it by putting everything into a centralized platform where you have centralized discoverability management that help you improve the data quality. You will also have end-to-end observability as you as everything coming to that integrated platform, and then you don't run into issues like Sumaya mentioned about having disparate systems and then copying over stuff, losing that lineage. And last thing, probably the most critical, one of the most critical benefits that the modern platforms will offer as process efficiency. So overall, you would be able to, with little improvements here and there, when they add up, you would be able to reduce the overall turnaround time for valuation activities. That means you'll have time, more time saved for important stuff like analyzing tax implications, coming up with different capital strategies. Your corporate actuaries would be able to report on things with greater precision now that have more time to massage into the data. They would also have time to think about long-term process improvements to make the valuation process better, to manage the risk in the companies better, rather than just making sure that we have, like, we can check off everything that we need to do before the regulators really chase after us. With that, I will wrap up our part of the session. We don't have much time left, but we are happy to go into the Q&As. Thank you, everyone.